Karen insults black soldier, his response brings the entire airport to silence. The airport hummed with the restless energy of travelers, a cacophony of rolling suitcases, hurried footsteps, and muffled announcements. Gate 23 was no different, a microcosm of humanity packed into a sterile corner of JFK International. Among the crowd stood Marcus Jackson, a 32-year-old Army sergeant, his camouflage duffel bag slung over one shoulder, his posture rigid yet weary from a long flight home from deployment. His dark skin glistened faintly under the fluorescent lights, and his eyes, though tired, carried a quiet strength, a strength forged in the crucible of service, loss, and survival. Marcus had seen enough of the world to know its beauty and its cruelty, but nothing prepared him for what was about to unfold. As he adjusted his bag, a woman's voice sliced through the din, sharp and venomous. "You don't belong here," she spat, her words dripping with disdain. Marcus turned to see a middle-aged woman, blonde hair pulled tight, lips pursed in a scowl pointing at him. Her name tag, pinned crookedly to her jacket, read Karen. The crowd around them stilled, sensing the storm brewing. Karen's voice grew louder, emboldened by the attention. "I saw you cut the line. People like you always think you're entitled, don't you? Acting like you own this place." Her words were a blade, cutting not just at Marcus but at the color of his skin, the uniform he wore, the very space he occupied. Whispers rippled through the onlookers, some nodded in discomfort. Others averted their eyes, but none intervened. Marcus's jaw tightened. He'd faced prejudice before on the streets of his hometown, in quiet moments overseas, but this was different. This was public, raw, and unrelenting. His heart pounded, not with fear but with a simmering resolve. He took a measured breath, his voice low but steady. "Ma'am, I didn't cut the line. I was directed here by the gate agent. I'm just trying to get home." Karen scoffed, her arms crossing defiantly. "Don't lie to me. I know your type, always playing the victim, always demanding special treatment. You think that uniform makes you better than us?" Her words were a match thrown into dry grass, igniting murmurs of agreement from a few in the crowd. Marcus felt the weight of their stares, a jury of strangers passing judgment without knowing his story. The air grew thick, the tension palpable. Marcus could have walked away, should have, maybe, but something in him refused to yield. He'd fought for his country, buried friends, and carried scars both visible and unseen. He wasn't about to let this woman strip him of his dignity. "Ma'am," he said, his voice rising just enough to carry. "This uniform doesn't make me better than anyone, but it does mean I've earned my place here, same as you." Karen's face reddened, her finger jabbing the air. "Earned? You people always think you're owed something. Go back to where you came from." The slur hung in the air, ugly and unapologetic. Gasps erupted from the crowd, and a young woman nearby clutched her child closer, her eyes wide with disbelief. Marcus's hands clenched into fists, but he held his ground, his gaze locked on Karen's. The airport seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. Then, a new voice broke the silencia, gravelly, trembling voice from the edge of the crowd. "Enough!" An elderly man, frail but commanding, stepped forward, his walker creaking under his weight. His face was weathered, his eyes sharp with a fire that belied his age. He wore a faded veteran's cap, its pins glinting under the lights. "I fought in Vietnam," he said, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "I saw men like him, men of every color, die for this country. You don't get to talk to him like that." The crowd turned, stunned by the old man's conviction. Karen faltered, her bravado cracking. The man continued, his voice shaking with emotion. "I was like you once, lady. Thought I knew who belonged and who didn't. Then a black soldier saved my life in Da Nang. Took a bullet meant for me. You want to talk about entitled? Look in the mirror. The words landed like a thunderclap. Karen's mouth opened, then closed, her defiance crumbling under the weight of the old man's truth. Marcus stood silent, his eyes meeting the veterans in a moment of unspoken understanding. The crowd, once divided, now shared a collective unease, their assumptions challenged by the raw honesty of the moment. Marcus seized the pause, his voice calm but piercing. "I don't want your pity or your applause," he said, addressing not just Karen but the entire gate. "I want what every person here wants to be seen for who I am, not judged for what you think I am. I fought for this country, for all of us, and I'll keep fighting. But I shouldn't have to fight to stand in this line." His words hung in the air, heavy with truth. A woman in the crowded college student with a backpack slung over one shoulder began to clap, slow and deliberate. Others joined, the sound building until it filled the terminal. Karen's face burned, but she said nothing, her eyes darting to the floor. The gate agent, who had been watching from behind the counter, stepped forward. "Sergeant Jackson," she said, her voice steady. "Your flight's boarding. Priority seating for military personnel." Marcus nodded, picking up his duffel bag. As he walked toward the gate, the crowd parted, their applause fading into a respectful silence. The elderly veteran gave him a nod, a silent salute that carried the weight of shared sacrifice. Karen stood frozen, her anger replaced by something else, shame, perhaps, or the first flicker of self-awareness. As Marcus disappeared down the jetway, the crowd dispersed, but the moment lingered. The college student lingered by the gate, pulling out her phone to share what she'd witnessed, her fingers trembling with emotion. The elderly veteran sat heavily on a nearby bench, his eyes distant, lost in memories of a war long past. And on that bench, scrawled in chalk, was a simple message: "A soldier's honor faces hate, will truth prevail?" The incident at Gate 23 became a story whispered across the airport, shared on social media, and debated in quiet corners. It was a reminder that prejudice, unchecked, could tear at the fabric of humanity, but also that courage and compassion could mend it. Marcus didn't need the applause to know who he was. He carried that truth in his heart, a beacon brighter than any insult could dim. What do you think? Where does justice lie in this clash of perspectives? And how do we heal the divides that fuel such moments?